Of course, let's begin our gentle descent into a world of quiet wonder. The clockmaker's ticking time she. Close your eyes now. Take a long, slow breath in and let it go. Gently, easily. Feel the quiet in your chest as your breath melts away into stillness. Let your shoulders soften. Let your jaw unclench. Let your mind begin to drift slowly, like mist over a sleeping village. You are safe here. You are warm. And the world outside no longer needs you. There is nothing to fix, nothing to chase, only this moment, this gentle rhythm, the soft, subtle ticking of time. Can you hear it? Like a heartbeat in the stillness. Tick, tock, tick, tock, tick, tock. Each one drawing you deeper, calmer, slower. Our story tonight sets sail in a place where time has its own secret language, where the quiet ticking of gears speaks in whispers, and dreams stretch out like soft shadows cast by lamplight. Let me take you there. Our story begins in the sleepy village of Evermere, tucked between rolling hills and draped in ivy and mist. Evermere was a place the world had nearly forgotten. The roads leading to it wound gently through glades of whispering trees, where golden leaves danced on the wind. And deer stepped softly across stone bridges, as though not to wake the moss beneath their hooves. But there was something else, something quietly magical in Evermere. Not the sort of magic that sparkled or soared. No, this was the magic of rhythm, of patience, of time itself. At the heart of this village, nestled between a bakery that smelled of cinnamon and an old bookshop with windows full of sleepy cats, stood a crooked little workshop. Its beams were old and bowed, and vines crept across its rooftop like nature's signature. A carved wooden sign above the door read simply, asterisk, asterisk. Inside this workshop lived a man whose life was spent shaping time, not by the ticking of watches alone, but by something deeper, something more sacred. His name was Lintus Thatch, though most simply called him the clockmaker. He was neither young nor old, his beard not quite gray, but brushed with frost like the edge of a winter morning. His hands were always covered in little flecks of brass and oil, and his fingers moved with the quiet certainty of someone who had long ago made peace with silence. Asterisk each day. From dawn until dusk, Lintus would sit at his great oak workbench, surrounded by clocks of every size. There were grand clocks with carved moons, dainty porcelain ones that chirped like birds, and delicate pocket watches whose lids opened like flower petals. But most of all, there was the sound. Tick, tock, tick, talk. Tick, tock, 100 clocks ticking at once. Not in unison, but in a soft and mesmerizing cascade. Like rainfall on rooftops. Like breathing in a forest. Like the very heartbeat of time. Leontis always said the sound was not a noise, but a lullaby. And he wasn't wrong. Many in the village who couldn't sleep would take a walk past his shop at night. They would stand outside in the lamplight and listen to the faint ticking through the windows, and without knowing how or why, their breathing would slow, their thoughts would quiet, and the world would feel just a little lighter. Asterisk, but what made Leontis different was his gift. You see, his clocks were not just mechanisms. They were vessels, stories, echoes of the people who owned them. He would say, each clock holds the soul of a moment, a fragment of a life, a piece of a dream waiting to be remembered. When someone brought him a broken timepiece, he would ask questions, not about gears or springs, but about memories. Where was it when you first held it? What did it hear on stormy nights? Whose laughter did it know best? And then, with the gentlest of care, he would listen to the ticking it longed to return to, and mend it not just with tools, but with tenderness. It was on one such quiet autumn morning, carrying a strange little box in her hands. Her name was Elira. Asterisk, she was a traveling painter, always wandering. From town to town, painting skies and forests, and sometimes dreams she had no words for. But on this day, her eyes were tired, her steps uncertain. She looked like someone who had been carrying more than just what her arms could hold. Good morning, she said, her voice barely louder than the ticking clocks. Leontis looked up from his bench, smiling beneath his spectacles. And good morning to you, dear traveler. What brings you to my tiny world of gears and whispers? Asterisk, Elira held out the box, small, made of dark wood, with a tiny brass key beside it. I found this in my grandmother's attic. She used to say it was special, but it's been silent for years. Leontis took the box and turned it slowly in his hands. He could feel it, the stillness, a silence that wasn't empty, but waiting. Sleeping, asterisk, he placed it gently on his velvet mat and wound the key just once, but nothing happened. He listened, touched it to his cheek. Still, silence. Elira looked away, disappointed. I guess it's gone. But Leontis shook his head, eyes soft with a smile. No, not gone, just lost. All it needs is time to remember how to dream again. And with that, he set to work. Asterisk, for 3 days, Elira stayed in Evermere. Each morning, she visited the shop, sitting quietly by the hearth with a cup of lavender tea, while Leontis worked. The shop was warm and filled with the scent of cedarwood and beeswax. Elira would watch as tiny gears dance between his fingers, as if they were old friends being reunited. Sometimes she painted. Sometimes she simply sat and listened. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Asterisk, and the longer she listened, the more she felt herself changing. Thoughts that had once raced through her mind began to slow, like leaves spiraling to earth. Her breathing deepened. Her shoulders softened. The clocks seemed to breathe with her, soothing her from the inside out. On the third evening, as dusk painted the sky in shades of honey and rose, Leontis held up the little box. He had replaced no parts, changed no gears, only polished and listened, and waited. Asterisk, try now. He whispered. Elira turned the key, and at first, nothing. But then, tick, a soft, sleepy sound, like a child waking from a long nap. Talk, another, steadier this time. And then, a gentle melody began to play. Not loud, not grand. Asterisk, just a quiet, tender song. Like a lullaby, you forgot, you remembered. Elira's eyes filled with tears. It was the song my grandmother used to hum. She whispered, I haven't heard it since I was a child. Leontis nodded slowly. It remembered, because you did. That night, Elira could not sleep. Not because she was restless, but because she didn't want to lose the feeling. Asterisk, she sat by her window, looking out at the village, the rooftops silvered in moonlight, and listened to the faint ticking of Leontis's shop down the lane. And as the clocks ticked, her thoughts slowed, her heart quieted, and at last she slipped into sleep as gently as a feather falls. There are places in the world where time is not just measured, but felt, where clocks are not reminders of hurry and hustle, but guardians of dreams, where a ticking second hand is not the end of a moment, but its beginning. The clockmaker of Evermere did not just fix watches, he mended moments. Asterisk, he healed what time had silenced, and in his ticking sanctuary, the world learned to rest again. You're safe now. The story has woven itself gently around you. Let the ticking guide you inward, toward the stillness. Tick, tock, inhale and exhale. Let the gentle rhythm carry you into sleep. Good night, dear dreamer. The clocks will keep watch until morning. Certainly. Let's return now, quietly and calmly, to the soothing world where time drifts like mist and dreams tick gently on ... softly now. Breathe in, hold it just a little, and let it go. Feel your body melting further into stillness. The space around you is quiet, warm, and safe. The world has slowed its spinning, and you are exactly where you need to be. Let the clock's ticking guide you once more. Asterisk, tick, tock, tick, tock, and let your mind return to Evermere. The days drifted like feathers on the breeze. After Elira's music box had been mended, she stayed. She couldn't quite explain why. There was something about Evermere. Something about the soft hush of the village, the kindness of its pace, the way no one hurried, and of course, the clock's asterisk. Each evening, she would walk past the shop, slowing her steps as the glow of lamplight spilled from its windows. Inside, the shadows of gears spun on the walls, and the air was filled with the quietest symphony of ticking dot. It was like listening to rain falling inside. A dream. Lintis welcomed her with a smile and a warm drink every time. And bit by bit, she learned the stories of the clocks. There was the grandfather clock in the corner, with a pendulum shaped like a crescent moon. Linus called it the Night Walker. It once belonged to a sailor, he explained, polishing its brass trim. When the sailor was lost at sea, this clock kept perfect time. Every night he dreamed of home, even though no one wound it. Then there was the wall of cuckoo clocks, dozens of them, each one carved with its own tiny forest, bird or beast. They were made by a man who lived alone in the woods. Linus said one night, his voice a hush over the fire. A new one, every time he had a dream he couldn't explain. Each clock holds a piece of a mystery, waiting to be solved. Asterisk, and then there was the silver watch. It sat in a velvet-lined drawer, tucked away from view. Elira only noticed it one rainy afternoon, when a beam of sun slipped through the clouds and caught its case, making it gleam. "What's this one?" she asked. Linus grew very quiet. "That's a promise that's still waiting to be kept." I didn't explain further. Asterisk and Elira didn't press. Some stories, she understood, weren't ready to be spoken. One morning, as frost kissed the window panes, Leontis turned to Elira with a peculiar glimmer in his eye. "You've listened to their stories," he said, nodding toward the clocks. "Perhaps you're ready to learn how to listen deeper." He led her to a tiny door in the back of the shop, so small it could be easily missed. He turned an iron key that clicked like the opening line of an ancient tale. The door creaked open, and the air changed. Inside was a round room. Asterisk walls curved gently inward like the inside of a bell, and in the center stood a single, massive clock. It was made of wood, glass, and shimmering threads of silver. Its hands were longer than swords, but moved with the grace of swans. Instead of numbers, it bore 12 symbols, stars, leaves, waves, feathers. This, Lintis whispered, is the heart clock. Elira stepped forward, and as she did, something shifted inside her. She felt it deep within her chest, a soft flutter like a bird remembering how to sing. What does it do? She asked. Lintis smiled faintly. Asterisk, it doesn't tell time. It feels it. She furrowed her brow. There are moments, he continued softly, that exist between seconds. Places where time doesn't tick forward or back, but simply pauses, where we can hear the world breathing. And if we're very still, we can hear ourselves too. He reached out and touched the glass. The clock's hands stopped. Asterisk, Elira felt. The silence swell, not empty, but full of memories, feelings, possibilities. She saw flickers, a child laughing in the snow, a woman spinning in a meadow, a man weeping by candlelight. All of it rising and falling like waves on the shore of her mind. When Leontis lifted his hand, the hands began to move again, and the images faded. Elira stepped back, breathless. Asterisk, it showed me things, she whispered, things I've never seen, but somehow I knew them. Linus nodded. The heart clock doesn't show what was. It shows what wants to be. Remembered. She sat down slowly. Her hands were trembling slightly, not from fear, but from awe. How did you make it? Lintis looked out the window, where snow had begun to fall in gentle spirals. I didn't. It was already here, long before me. I simply built the room around it. Asterisk, some clocks build themselves when the world needs them. That night, Elira dreamed of gears turning inside stars, of music made from light, of time that flowed like a river, not in lines, but in spirals and loops. And when she woke, she began to paint again, but this time, not forests or skies. She painted moments. The moment a tear fell into a cup of tea. The moment before a kiss. The moment when a lonely child reached for a hand in the dark. Each painting felt like it had always existed. She had simply uncovered it. As the weeks passed, word began to spread. People came to Evermere from nearby villages, not just for the clocks, but for the peace. Asterisk, the mayor of Hollowbrook, came, exhausted from years of speeches and signatures. He sat in Leontis's shop, eyes closed, listening to the ticking. When he left, he had forgotten his shoes and said he'd never felt lighter. A young widow came, clutching a locket that no longer chimed. Leontis fixed it. But more than that, he let her sit by the fire for hours, saying nothing. Just letting the clocks hold her grief until she was ready to carry it again. And always, Elira was there, sometimes helping, sometimes painting, asterisk, sometimes simply being part of the quiet magic that wrapped itself around the shop like mist. One evening, as the fire crackled and the clocks sang their lullaby, Elira turned to Lindis and asked softly, "How do you know when it's time to move on?" He looked at her for a long while, then answered, "When you can hear the ticking of the world, even without the clock." She nodded, and the next morning she packed her brushes. But before she left, gave her a gift. It was a tiny pocket watch, asterisk, plain, unadorned, but inside, where the face should be, was a miniature painting, one of Elira's own. It showed a candle burning in a window, and 1,000 stars reflected in its glass. "This doesn't keep hours," he said. "It keeps stillness." And Elira, with tears in her eyes, pressed it to her heart. "Thank you." Leontis only smiled and nodded once. As she walked away, the snow beginning to fall once more. The village of Evermere faded behind her. Asterisk, but the ticking stayed, not in her ears, but in her bones, in her breath, in her art. And whenever the world became too loud, too fast, too heavy, she would pause, close her eyes, and listen. Asterisk, tick, tock, tick, tock, and in that rhythm, find her way back to herself, to Evermere, to the clockmaker's time. You're doing so well. Let the images swirl gently around your mind now. The soft snow, the fires glow, the silver hands of the heart clock moving not forward, not back, but simply, softly, tick, tock. Let the rhythm carry you deeper, slower, into sleep. Of course, you've done beautifully to come this far. Let us return now to the soft ticking of time, to the village where stillness speaks, and dreams breathe gently through the hands of a clock. The clockmaker's ticking time. Close your eyes once more. Feel the weight of the blankets around you, the way they hold you, like clouds woven into cotton. Breathe in the quiet, breathe out the day. There's nothing to do now. Only this moment, only the gentle ticking of a world that has learned how to rest. Time passed, as it always does in Evermere, softly, slowly, like a hush across the hills. After Elira's departure, the little workshop returned to its rhythm. Leontis continued his quiet work, repairing memories, coaxing forgotten songs from silent gears, and welcoming any who wandered in, weary and seeking stillness. The snow gave way to spring, and spring gave birth to a summer of lavender blooms and long golden afternoons. And yet, something in the air had shifted. It began with the clocks. One by one, they started ticking, out of sync. Not wildly, not broken, just off. Asterisk, a half second early, a fraction too slow, a harmony unraveling thread by thread. Leontes noticed it first in the night walker. Its pendulum stuttered for the first time in years. Then the cuckoo clocks chirped at uneven intervals. The chimes lost their rhythm. And most curious of all, the heart clock had stopped completely. Its great hands hung motionless in the air, hovering between two symbols, a feather and an hourglass. Leontes stood before it for hours, listening, but there was nothing to hear. Asterisk only. Quiet, not the peaceful quiet of sleep, but the kind of silence that comes before something changes. Then, late one night, a knock came at the door. It was soft, barely a tap, but Leontes opened it with the same reverence he gave to every moment. Standing in the doorway was a boy, perhaps 9 or 10. Eyes wide, too wide, as if they had seen too much, too soon. He clutched something in his hands, something wrapped in cloth. His shoes were dusty. Asterisk, his breathing quick. "My name's Corwin," he said softly. "My mother sent me." Leontes knelt before him. "Then you are very welcome, Corwin." The boy unwrapped the bundle. It was a clock, but not just any clock. It was cracked, rusted, but pulsing. Leontius drew in a quiet breath. He recognized it. It had once been his. Asterisk, long ago. Before Evermere, Leontes had lived in a great city, a place of engines and noise and ambition. He had worked not as a clockmaker then, but as a designer of machines that sliced time into fractions, schedules, timetables, precision. But something had happened, something he never spoke of, only that he left it all behind and came to Evermere to remember what time was meant to feel like. And now, this clock from that forgotten chapter had returned. Corwin's voice trembled as he explained. Asterisk, she used to wind it every night. Said it helped her remember who she was. But one day, she stopped. She forgot everything, even me. He looked up. She said, if it ever broke, I should find the man who made it, because only he could remind it how to tick again. Took the clock gently from his hands. Its surface was cold, its gears sticky with rust. But beneath it all, soft, slow pulse. Not a beat, not a sound, asterisk, just a feeling, The feeling of waiting. For days, Lintus worked. He cleared his bench. He lit candles. He closed the shop. The village grew quiet in his absence. People whispered that something was happening, something old and deep, an important dot, and all the while, Corwin sat by the fire. He didn't ask questions. He didn't cry. He simply listened to the wind, to the silence, to the space between ticks. Asterisk on the 7th night. The heart clock moved. A single click, then another, and then slowly, like a yawn returning to the world. Tick, tock. Corwin's eyes widened. The cracked clock on the bench gave a shudder. Its hands trembled. Its glass glowed faintly with golden warmth, and then, as if the world had been holding its breath, it ticked once, twice, asterisk, and then steadily, clearly, like a song remembered. Corwin smiled. I think she'll hear it now. Leontis placed the clock into the boy's arms. He didn't ask for thanks. He didn't give instructions. He only said, "Tell her." Time never left her. It just waited. Corwin nodded. And before the sun had even risen, he was gone after that night. The clocks began to return to rhythm. Asterisk, the night walker, swung with renewed grace. The cuckoos chirped in harmony again. Even the tiny music boxes began to play in gentle cascades of memory, but Leontis grew quiet. He spent more time staring into the heart clock, more time walking in the woods behind the village, more time writing in the leather-bound journal he kept beside his workbench. And then, one morning, he locked the shop, not forever, just for a while. It was autumn again when Elira returned. Asterisk, she came carrying new paintings, stories written in color, shaped from dreams. She had traveled far to cities and coasts, mountains and deserts, but none of them ticked the way Evermere did. Dot. When she reached the shop, she found a letter on the door. Gone for a walk, it read. Back when the wind changes. She smiled. Inside the shop, everything remained. The clocks ticking. The hearth quiet. Asterisk, the velvet mat still waiting for the next story to be mended. And on the wall, above the bench, hung a new clock, small, unfinished. But inside, it was a painting, one of Corwin and the woman who remembered. Elira sat at the workbench. She lit a candle. She took out her paints, and she waited, not for Leontis, asterisk, but for the moment between moments, the place where dreams tick softly and time learns how to listen. And now, dear dreamer, you've wandered through this story like a breeze through a meadow. You followed the ticking through hearthlight and snowfall, through memory and silence, all the way to this quiet place. Can you feel it? That soft rhythm, tick, tock. A lullaby written not in words, but in stillness. The world doesn't need you right now. It's your time now to drift, to float, to sleep. Let the ticking hold you. Let the quiet wrap around you like a well-loved quilt. You are safe. You are whole. You are home. Tick, tock, sleep. Good night, sleep tight, my friends. Stay blessed, my friends. Sweet dreams.